things that we have going on with Pluto and Aquarius, and I think even some other astrology. I would have to look it up. You guys let me know in the comment section if you know which planets and which movements are instigating more cult like activity from like the last year or two, but all the way through, I've heard 2025, 2026. What that means is that on a more spiritual and intuitive note, when we see things like cults coming out, I notice again with my watchful mediumistic eye, psychic eye, I automatically look for the polar opposite because the universe isn't trying to fool us. The universe isn't trying to trip us up or trick us, okay? It is an opportunity for us all to learn. So you look at what's toxic and then you look at what's good. You look at what's high vibrational and you look at what's low vibrational. And in the case of the Buffalo Bills and Taylor Swift, we have a coming together of these two worlds. I spotted this immediately. I became obsessed with this immediately. And I'll tell you why. I grew up often in New York State, okay, especially when I was younger. And during that time, I noticed something weird happening with football, and in particular, the Buffalo Bills. I was put in Catholic school for a while. And in Catholic school, worshiping the Buffalo Bills, okay, in this area of New York was as important as going to church. It was as important as that creepy Pledge of Allegiance I was forced to stand up and do every morning that I resented. I knew darn well when I was being brainwashed into a cult. I knew it at Catholic school every day, not when we were talking about science or math necessarily, but definitely when we were teaching like religious class or we had to go to church. I knew when we had to do the Pledge of Allegiance, I was being indoctrinated into a cult. I could feel that. And I felt the same thing with the Buffalo Bills. Now, this is such a weird thing to have watched unfold. I'm 44 now. Okay. So, like, I've seen over the years this get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I have noticed that people went from enjoying football, enjoying their team, go Bills go, okay, to becoming like Bills Mafia. And every store in the mall was a Buffalo Bills store, and every piece of clothing you buy has Buffalo Bills. And I walk in to buy a car, and there are cutout statues of Buffalo Bills players everywhere, and it's on everyone's car and it's like flags. I mean, it was like watching the Trump movement. I mean, it was like nuts, right? And people started to say, does there seem to be like something weirder going on with this? Like, what is it? Is it racism? Like, what is it? And I was like, I'll tell you what it is, but it's not time yet. Watch this, okay? Now, people who are obsessed with the Buffalo Bills tend to have maybe no personality or they have avoidant and escapist issues. I've learned this firsthand with many clients or people I've dated, or I'm just very careful to avoid. They can become absolutely obsessed because things in their life aren't going very well and they have nothing else going on. So they dive into, there's also a lot of loneliness there. So they dive into pretending that this is a culture, okay, that like being into a sports team is a culture somehow. It's their only form of entertainment. Um, you know, when the team loses, the whole area, if you reside in this area, you realize people are aggressive, they're nasty, they're depressed. Nothing like a sports team should be causing this level of distress or intoxicated joy. Okay. It's nutty. Now, what has also happened in recent years is that people who come here from outside the New York area to perform, comedians, stage performers, they started speaking out on how creepy the people of this area are. So they have said to their audiences, have you seen Buffalo? Have you performed in Buffalo? Do you see how nutty these people act? Because people in the audience will shout out and interrupt shows to shout out names of Buffalo Bills players. And whatever the performer, the comedian on stage is talking about or doing, they don't even know like how to respond to that. They're like, what a weird thing to say. Like, it doesn't have anything to do with what I'm talking about. It doesn't have anything to do with the performance. No one else in the room understands what you're even doing or saying, right? It's so off base, so unaware, like no, zero audience awareness, even when they're in the audience. It's so weird. And so I'm like, okay, I'm definitely not the only one who sees it. Okay. So what ends up happening here is that Taylor Swift, who is leading the opposite, okay, of what I believe is a toxic cult, because now murders have happened at these sporting events. The Buffalo Bills just lost the other night. And some of the players have had to take down their social media because they're getting death threats. Fans have physically attacked them. I mean, they've lost it. Okay, it's a cult. 100%, it's a cult. When you have nothing else in life, you join a cult. This is what happens. Now, Taylor Swift, the opposite of a cult. Okay, I know the Swifties. Let me know if you are one in the comment section. I know that it can sometimes seem culty. She has like a cult like following. However, I really feel that the majority, and I don't really follow her, so I don't know a lot about it, but I feel like the majority of what she's doing for like the women's movement and mindfulness and self-healing and being an advocate for like you know not only women empowerment, but also like speaking out against toxicity or toxic masculinity and attacks from the world around you. I mean, she's a huge player in the women's movement for sure. And she is going to be more clearly seen in, the younger generations over the next, I think, 10, 20 years and what her influence is, So whether you want to say she's kind of like Madonna or, she's absolutely amazing. Well, she started dating one of the NFL players. And so she started coming to Buffalo a lot. And some of the Buffalonians, I guess, started basically stalking her, right? So, anyways, long story short, I thought it was really interesting to see that we have this cult that I've been observing since I was a kid with the Buffalo Bills and this Buffalo Bills mafia and this obsession that rules their mood, their life, their choices, even destruction, even violence against Taylor Swift, who was coming to the actual Buffalo Bills games and spent a lot of time, and the high vibrational movement that she is creating for feminism. And to watch those two worlds come together, I was like, bam, there it is. My screen just went off. Let me see if I can get everything back. All right. So, very interesting. Again, when you're watching something like the development of a dark movement, potentially, it doesn't have to be. Football's great. You love it? Love it. That's great. But if it becomes a dark movement, and people are becoming obsessive and they're not thinking anymore, logic has left the building. They're essentially becoming possessed, and we see mass numbers of this, people doing this happening. Always expect on a spiritual level, on a universal level, to see the counter effect with a polar opposite movement or someone else leading something. And you can see them, okay, simultaneous, side by side, just like that. So I thought that was pretty awesome.